What is good, YouTube? Quinn Wade basketball analysis coming to y'all with that hot topic. I've been covering the coaches a lot more because we starting to see how valuable they are. Um, Stan Van Gundy to me is one of the better coaches in the league. Even when he was with Detroit, health was a big problem to why he wanted to leave. They had a tough roster. They had a tough cap. Fans wasn't showing up. They wasn't making the playoffs. They was almost there, almost there. They made it once. Reggie Jackson was an integral part of the team, but he could never stay healthy enough for them to continue to make runs deep in the playoffs. Plus, they basically changed the roster damn near every year and was trying new parts, trying to get cheaper, trying not to get cap strapped. And they still ended up doing it with Blake Griffin, Andre Drummond, and Reggie Jackson. Dwane Casey, he's in for a run. This team still needs to be built a lot better. I don't know what they're trying to do with this roster. Like I said, this to me when Stan Van Gundy took over the team with Josh Smith, Andre Drummond, and Greg Monroe, they was already in a bad position. And I think this is one of the worst coaching positions. But a lot of coaches don't really care about that. They just blessed and happy to have a job. They still know that you're not going to always get the ideal situation like a Steve Kerr. You still might go like Jason Kidd to the Nets. You might go to the Bucks. You might be having to upbring a team. You might have to rebuild a team. You might have to, try to take them to that next level. So every coaching job ain't the same. And a lot of these coaches are just happy to get that opportunity because to me, this is not a good job. This is not a great enough roster, and they don't have as much cap space to make room. I think, like I told you guys in my rebuilding video, they need to really try to focus in on the draft. Since if they can't move Andre Drummond or Blake Griffin, or they want to keep them anyway, they're definitely gonna have to try to get as much talent as they can to continue to build around this roster without committing that much salary cap. And it kind of sounds stupid because, once you have this type of roster, you think you're in a good position. But that's on paper. Like the roster don't look that bad on paper. But once you see these players that they can't floor space, they can't stay healthy. And even if they do, their ceiling is not a championship team. For them to have as much cap space as they have, I mean, using as much cap space as they have done, they not a championship team, and there's not that much wiggle room. It's not that much you can really do, um, and you're stuck. And Dwane Casey, I believe that he seen what they was trying to do to a certain extent, but he also knew this was a work in progress. This team is far away from a championship, um, and even if they do make the playoffs, that's as good as it really gets. Kind of like Toronto, they was able to take it to another level, but they were still not really able to get to the finals. But they did get to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of times. This roster maybe can get out of the second round at best, but with the cap situation that they're in, they don't have that much wiggle room to really put a championship team together without really trying to trade for good pieces that can fit around this team. But even if you do that, kind of like Portland, you're trying to get the young talent while you still have your nucleus and your core, but they still haven't paid Nurkic. Once they pay Nurkic, they don't have really no room at all to get another big free agent or even trade for anybody unless they trade a lot of their roster for that fourth guy or that third guy or even that first option if you don't think Damian Lillard will be. And then after that, they don't have no room to really get anybody unless they take significant pay cuts. So it is good to be competitive. It is good to be in the playoffs. It is good to be competing. But when you're in these type of situations where you only can go as high as the cap, like Golden State took pay cuts. That Miami Heat team with LeBron James and Chris Bosh took pay cuts. Tim Duncan took a pay cut. Tony Parker took a pay cut. Blake Griffin is getting max salary. Andre Drummond got max. Reggie Jackson didn't get the best deal, but he hasn't lived up to his contract yet because he kept getting injured. So I do think this team is potentially a playoff team. Obviously, they proved that the last couple years. Like I said, injuries played a big factor into that, but this is going into the same thing. They're not going to be good enough to win the championship, and they're not going to be good enough to really go out there and beat the better team, especially in the playoffs. So, what are they really trying to accomplish? I think that's something that they had to tell Dwane Casey up front. Their vision. Obviously, Stan Van Gundy had a different vision when he came in, and then when he left this year, this whole roster is in a different position. So I think Dwane Casey is going to take at least 2 to 3 years just to get this roster fixed because they contracts that they have are just so bad that he's going to have to be patient with his roster. He might have some type of success, but the team won 39 games last year, showing you that they can compete in the East. Remember, they're not going against that many West teams. They're mostly competing against a lot of the East teams. So he can pick up a lot of W's that way. But when it comes to the playoffs, I don't really think this roster has enough to really go out there and compete, and the situation that they're in kind of stopped them from competing anyway because it's difficult to build that type of roster now with them committing so much money to Andre Drummond and Blake Griffin. So I think the offense will be a lot better. I think that they'll be a lot less predictable, and their defense will be a lot better. Hopefully, under Dwane Casey, they can see a new way of playing. They can have that positive influence. They can have a guy that they know can coach, even though Stan Van Gundy can. And I like what he did in Detroit. It's just so hard to be a team like, an organization like Detroit when you're trying to draft right and you're trying to make a trade to get people to come in, and you want to be competitive because Detroit always been known as a competitive team since the 70s and the 80s. You know, we all go through the rebuild process. We all have our ups and downs, but this team has been trying to rush to build a playoff team. Like I said about even with the Josh Smith thing, they've been in a rush. They're trying to find the quickest way to make it back to the playoffs, but it don't work like that. You still got to have talent, but you still got to have the right pieces around, the right players that wants to win, wants to get better, wants to put in the work, and they don't have that right now. The roster really don't mesh. The roster really don't play well together. Obviously, Blake Griffin is a good thing, but under the contract that he's under, if he was getting paid at least 20, 23, 20, 22, 23 million, that would have been fine because he still is an all-star caliber player. He can still give you 20. He can still give you 3 to 4 to 5 assists. He can still give you 8 to 9 to 10 rebounds. He can play make. He can handle the ball. He can play still. He has been injured, but even with the Clippers this year, he was playing phenomenal basketball for his age. Um, and he hit game winners. He took over games. He closed games for the Clippers, but he kept getting injured. And if you have a guy like Reggie Jackson that continues to get injured, you have a guy like Blake Griffin that continue to get injured. It's just hard to really be happy and positive about this move to get Dwane Casey. And I just think they told him what they wanted to tell him. He told him his direction, what he wants to do. They got on the same page, and that's going to take a process. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because Detroit fans gonna say, "Hey, we got Blake Griffin, we got Andre Drummond. He's an all-star. Now we got Dwane Casey. We're going to be a great team, but it ain't going to be that fast." And I think they know that already. And this is going to be a tough coaching job. But at least you have some type of talent. At least you have some players you know what they can do and what they're capable of. At least you can build some type of identity to help this team win right now. But at the same time, the future don't look like a championship future right now because Blake Griffin, I think, has 4 more years to go on that contract. Andre Drummond, I think, has 3 more years to go. And Reggie Jackson's a free agent next year, but he's not taking up that much of cap because you're still going to have to draft a player. You're going to want to get some type of free agents, even if they're taking a pay cut. But I guess, Dwane Casey going to go along with the process and try to rebuild this team to a championship contender. That's what Stan Van Gundy came in. He came into a mess. 3 to 4 years later, he was able to get them back to the playoffs, but they wasn't able to get to that championship level, and they wasn't able to get there consistently. And now that he has left, they have really accomplished nothing because they're back in the same position that they was when they had Greg Monroe, Josh Smith, and Andre Drummond. and they don't really have any young talent that people are really looking out for. I was a fan of Stanley Johnson. He's a guy that can play great defense, play hard, has a lot of confidence, but he never really panned out, and he didn't really get significant minutes until this year. And if he doesn't get significant minutes again, or they try to find somebody that can come in and contribute right away, that can stunt his growth. But you also know that he can't really shoot consistently, and he has a long way to go. And if you do plug them in and want to play them, it's going to be some growing pains. You're going to lose a lot of games. You're going to win some games. You're going to be competitive some games. But that's part of the process, man. And he did it with Toronto. He came in Toronto knowing that it was going to be a tough order. He got them to franchise wins. He got them to Eastern Conference Finals, but they could never be a championship contender. And to me, this Detroit Pistons team, even though they have won championships and they have a GM that's not Dwane Casey, they let Stan Van Gundy be the GM and the coach. Good thing that they stopped doing that and got a real GM and let the coach do his job, let the GM do their job. But at the end of the day, we shall see what's going to happen, and we shall see how this goes. But like I said, Stan Van never got him there, and Dwane Casey, a new coach, got a new direction, got a new identity for this team, and he does have some all stars on his roster. So it's not the worst situation, it's not the best situation to go to either. But he has 5 years, he's getting paid, and they look like they feel like he's the guy for this job. And if he is, he has an opportunity to show it. But we gonna see if he can really get this team to the next level. We gonna really see if he can hang up a banner and get him a championship with this roster. I think it's gonna be tough. I think it's not gonna be easy, and they're gonna have to basically try to rebuild this team on the fly so he can start winning right away. And even if they keep this team together, they might have enough to make the playoffs, even though the NBA is getting tougher. But they don't have really that much error room because they're cap strapped. Check out my videos, my older videos. Check out my website, NosisPlayground.com. Link up in the description in the comment section below. Check out my Facebook page, NosisPlayground.com. Link in the description in the comment section below. Do you think Casey gonna help them? Do you think they don't have enough? Do you think that they fucked up with their cap space? Do you think that they can make trades? Do you think that they can sign free agents, which is going to be tough to do because they don't have the cap space for none of that stuff either? Do you think they should rebuild through the draft? I said that too, but if you're competing in the East, you're not going to get top 10 draft picks, and you're not going to get high lottery picks because you have a good enough record. So you get the mediocre fit, basically 12 to 20 picks, which you really gonna have to scout. You really got to do some digging. You really got to try to research and see a player that you can fit in and develop, and he still has to want it. So this is gonna be tough. Let me know what you guys think.